Hello, everybody. My name is Laura Atkins. I am the marketing manager at RKL Solutions. Thank you for joining us today. Today, we are hosting Prophix for a webinar on proactive scenario planning. On the line from Prophix today, we have Tanwir Rohilla, who has 10 years of experience in the CPM space with 8 years at Prophix. He will be giving us a short intro to the platform. And next, we'll hear from Ijlal Javed, who joined Prophix in January of 2020 as an implementation consultant. For the next 2 years, he has helped customers from various industries derive full value from their CPM system, streamlining their internal processes. And before joining Prophix, Ijlal has extensive experience working in the financial services industry, focusing primarily on capital markets divisions of various large financial institutions in Toronto. So he's got a ton of experience to share with us today, and he will be conducting a demo of proactive scenario planning within the platform. Also on the line from RKL Solutions, we have Steve Roth. Steve has 6 years of combined financial reporting and FP&A implementation experience. He is our certified Prophix implementer and is experienced in other EPM solutions. He enjoys acting as a trusted advisor to RKL clients and can provide ideal solutions to complex modeling and reporting problems. Steve will be on the line to answer all of your questions about implementation, support, and integrations with your Sage solution. So just a few notes before we get started. All lines are muted, but we do encourage you to please submit any questions you have throughout the presentation using the Q&A feature, which is at the bottom of your screen. We will answer all of those questions at the end. The session will be recorded, and we will get that recording out to all of you within the next few days. Tanwir, let's get started.
Awesome. Thanks, Laura. Good afternoon, everyone. Much appreciate your time and attention for the next 50 minutes or so. We have an action-packed agenda, so let's go get started. Today, we'll first discuss the landscape and how that's changed since the pandemic. We'll then talk a little bit about what Prophix does, and then we'll spend the meat of the presentation in the demo. And then lastly, we'll go over some Q&A. So there's no doubt over the last 24 months has changed how we all work, and particularly for those who work in finance. If we take the annual budgeting process before the pandemic, finance teams spent weeks, maybe months, creating plans that had to be ripped up and rewritten in record time due to the changing external environment. So Prophix and Dive Research conducted a Cfo Benchmark Study to see how the pandemic affected finance transformation. The study surveyed 205 CFOs and senior execs and found that 3/4 have actually stepped up their forecasting frequency. Organizations that may previously have not forecasted before and would just use the annual budget are now realizing the importance of more frequent forecasting. And of particular focus is on scenario modeling, being able to create the best case, worst case, high, medium, low scenarios. As the pandemic showed us how quickly things can change around us, and our plans need to be able to adapt. As we start to go back to our normal, we're also starting to see 2022 budgets increase in size, with 12% seeing increases of 40% or more in their budgets, really just highlighting the importance of the impact to the overall business. Unsurprisingly, a high number, 86%, agree that finance teams' skills need to evolve because of the data and analytics involved in continuous planning and forecasting. And really the key takeaway from this is that there were few regrets from not having the technology in place to automate and streamline the changes that businesses required as our external environments rapidly change, particularly in CPM technology. If we consider the industry dynamics for finance professionals, there's an increasing demand on finance teams, and we'll talk a little bit more about this on the next slide. But really, the business expects finance to deliver more now, not just reporting on data that's happened, but also providing that foresight. With this increase in demand, no one also talks about adding more resources. So with the constrained resources, how do you bridge that gap? And the answer, of course, is going to be through technology. There's changing environments, So I don't want to say the C word, but the last 24 months is a great example of how we need to be agile to adapt to those changing environments. And then lastly, a lack of workflow, limiting collaboration and communication that's imperative for decision making. All of these factors, plus inadequate technologies like our beloved Excel spreadsheets, have serious business implications. Limited constrained growth and subpar analysis, unable to get insights from the data, turnover, degraded margins, and most importantly, missed opportunities. If we think of the role of finance in the business, as we were talking about in the earlier slides, it's really expected for finance to now provide the 360-degree vision, which is a combination of these three things. Hindsight, this is where finance has historically felt comfortable. It's reporting on what's already happened in the past, the actual data. The business has transactions, the month is closed, and then reporting on it every month, every quarter, every year. And over the last little while, finance has really started to evolve from the focus of hindsight into insight, analyzing the data and trends to better understand what the numbers mean, and using technology like the Excel spreadsheets. But where the future lies and what the business really needs is for finance to spend more time providing foresight. And this is where we're starting to see CFOs invest more heavily in workflow and automation platforms like Prophix, where finance can not only automate the aggregation and presentation of data to significantly free up time to spend on analysis, but also to model scenarios and generate that actionable insight, the insight that fundamentally drives the future of the businesses that they support. This, in a nutshell, is exactly what Prophix helps deliver. Finance can only deliver this complete vision if it has both the time and the proper tools to do so, which is exactly what the combination of Sage ERP and Prophix CPM helps bring. So who is Prophix? We are a Sage global partner for CPM. We've been in business for over 30 years, and we have customers around the globe. Our customers are extremely important to us, and we are able to integrate to all platforms of Sage, all of the different flavors. Our data connectors are verified and certified by Sage, and we can also integrate to not just Sage systems, but also really any ERP, any CRM system, payroll system, or even flat file data sources like Excel files. We have focus and experience in every industry. Our customers span many different verticals. And we also have a fanatical focus on the customer experience, which is evident through our NPS score, and Net Promoter Score, something that the organization is very proud of. So what is it that we actually do? We're going to be touching a lot of this during the demo shortly, but really there's 4 key pillars that make up our CPM platform. Prophix is unified, meaning your subscription gives you access to pretty much everything that you see here on the screen. Now, when it comes to budgeting and planning, this is the ability to plan, forecast, and budget across your 3 key statements, the income statements, balance sheet, and cash flow, at really any detail or at any high level. It's up to you as to how detailed you want to make it. Reporting and analytics, this is really combining the hindsight, insight, foresight we were talking about earlier, being able to slice and dice your data. But really the key philosophy behind Prophix is to provide self-service analysis without having users call someone up from finance or IT to get a data dump, being able to do the analysis on the fly. Financial consolidation, there's capability for multi-currency, intercompany eliminations. So that way, as the organization grows and scales, so too does the Prophix solution. And then the last pillar is workflow, really being able to automate and streamline getting data and distributing that across the system. All of that is wrapped around our virtual financial analysts, which is where we're starting to see AI and machine learning make its way into the product to really make it easy for the Office of Finance. So enough talking about slides. Let's now take a look at the tool in action. So I'm going to pass this over to my colleague Ijlal, who's going to walk us through the Prophix demo.
Okay, thank you, Tanvir. And welcome, everybody. So I'll be walking you guys through the product itself. I'll be showing you Prophix in action, and the plan is for me to show you what the annual budgeting and planning process looks like. When we talk about being agile, we want to talk about what the base case is like and how Prophix really comes in and makes the annual budgeting and planning process streamlined and smooth. From there, I'm going to jump into forecasting and how Prophix really makes that effort a lot more straightforward, easy for your users to work out. And what that translates to for your organization is the ability to do multiple forecasts within a year. I'm going to show you some examples of that. And then I'll finally jump on to scenario analysis. I'll show you how Prophix is really helping you streamline that process as well, really just taking away all that manual effort required to get that process going so that your team can focus on the value add activities. So let me increase the real estate here. Perfect. So yeah, so what we're looking at here is the Prophix dashboard. And the dashboard, like everything else in Prophix, is entirely configurable based on your needs and requirements. So I'm going to touch on that point several times throughout the demo, but just keep that piece in mind. It is entirely configurable. So what you see here is not exactly what you will be working with. You can set up the dashboard to present you with any piece of information that you'd like to see. And what I've done on my dashboard is set up some quick analysis tools really to help me quickly gauge on the financial health of the firm. And what I also have here on the sides are some tasks assigned to me and some favorite files and processes that I like to work through. So I'm going to ignore all this section on the left-hand side. I'm going to be focusing on the planning and budgeting. And a lot of our customers, when they come to us, they talk about their planning and budgeting cycle, and they discuss it as it's a collaborative process with many budget owners involved throughout their organization, many department heads contributing to the budget. And the finance team describes the process as collaborative, but frustrating at times because really there's a lot of collaboration effort required where they're sending out emails, trying to follow up and getting the information that they need. And finally, when they're receiving this information, they're receiving it in custom Excel templates where they're going to have to take that information and translate it into a more standardized template for their budget, which is going to go to the board for formal approval. Now, when it comes to these two big pain points that I'm talking about, let's chat about the first one, which is the collaborative effort. So in Prophix, what we do is utilize the workflow tool to help with any kind of collaborative process, and I'm going to show you this right now. So here's a typical collaborative process within your budget, right? You have your different activities, you have your different tasks throughout your budget. Now, what Prophix is doing is really taking these series of tasks and activities and organizing it in a way that's easy to follow and easy to maintain on an ongoing basis. So what you're seeing on your screen here is just that same process, but organized in such a way that's easy for any budget owner to observe as it goes through the different steps. Now, during this entire process, Prophix is taking care of the collaboration effort for you. So it's reaching out to the budget owners and activity owners, letting them know, it's like, hey guys, like your task is coming up. And in fact, within that email, they're going to share a link with them. Like you can access your task right here. Just click on this link, log into Prophix, you can complete your task. Now, throughout this process, what the administrator can also do is introduce rules to really streamline that process. So like you're not waiting on somebody to complete their process if they're out of office, for example, or if there's any kind of bottlenecks, you can create rules to bypass it to keep the process going. Now, let's head back to the dashboard, right? Here are some of the tasks that were assigned to me from that workflow that I was showing you. And I'm going to go over a couple of these tasks here. Let's start off with Opex Planning. So here is an Opex Planning template that I've, again, put together. Again, this is entirely configurable. So if you choose to set it up differently, that's easily done within Prophix. And what I've done on this template is I've set it up to budget across time. And I've also included 2 reference fields here on the side for my end users to really reference back to to get that additional information when they're populating their budget. What I've also done is pre-populated this budget template with prior year actuals. Again, just another reference data set for my users to take into account when they're populating their budget. And really what all of this is doing is allowing them to be in a position where they can be self-sufficient. They don't need to reach back out to the finance team to get what the numbers looked like last year or what the previous budget looked like. All of this is easily accommodated right here within Prophix. Now, what I've also done is I've set up the template so that the users can do planning for different departments, right? And Prophix security profile is going to determine what user gets access to which departments, and you don't need to set up this template multiple times for different users. You set it up once, share it with the workflow, and Prophix takes care of the rest. Now, data entry in Prophix is really straightforward, and there's many ways of going about doing this. Now, there's that base case where the way you would do it in any Excel template, where you just head over to the cell you want to update and just punch that number in, and you're done. Now, another way of doing data entry into Prophix is where you can just do it at an annual level. And when you try to do it at an annual level, as an example, let's make this 60,000. What Prophix is going to do is it's going to ask you to spread it across time because you're trying to populate it at annual level. Now, there's many ways to spread it across time. You can choose to spread it evenly, which is simply the 60,000 that I entered divided by 12. Or you can spread it based on existing data. And what that does is it takes the values that are already in the cells and takes a ratio of the total and spreads that 60 accordingly. And in this case, what that's going to do is take that seasonality into account. Remember, I pre-populated the budget with prior year actuals, and it's just going to take that seasonality that was experienced for office expenses last year into account when I'm spreading that 60,000. Now, there's one more option here, and this is where Prophix allows you to be a little bit more creative, and you can do that same spread across time based on data somewhere else. So if you wanted to, for example, spread this based on headcounts, you can easily do that right here. And you can use any of these different drivers that I have set up to spread it across time. If you want to do it based on headcount, you can easily do that from right here as well. And I've set up some spread factors over here to help me with my spreading as well. For now, I'm just going to spread it based on existing data. And Prophix takes care of the calculations for me. So really what that means for your end users is, again, they don't have to worry about calculating it out on their Excel file, populating the template accordingly. This is automatically done through Prophix spreading function. Other ways of doing data entry is where you can simply just take a formula, as you might be used to. So if I wanted to, maybe not a good example, let's do this one. If I just wanted to top this up by, let's say, 50%, I can easily do that right here as well. Again, trying to do data entry at an annual level, so Prophix is going to ask me to spread it across time. Now, sometimes what happens is when you're doing your planning, you might want to do it at a line item detail level. This usually happens with accounts like IT expenses, where you have different line items such as computers, monitors, and so on that you want to account for. Advertising is another good example where you might want users to do data entry at a line item level. And in Prophix, you can make that as a requirement for users as well. So if I wanted to do any kind of data entry in advertising, Prophix is going to ask me to do it at a line item level. And what that looks like is right here, where I've broken the advertising down by different line items. So I got web, television, radio, print. You can choose to add any other form of line item for advertising here as well, such as social media, provide some justification, provide some notes here, and you can spread it across time as needed or populate it one by one as needed as well. And what this really does is for growing organizations, instead of really setting up a brand new set of accounts in your chart of accounts, you can take care of that using line item details. It's easier to maintain and manage. And what in the future periods, you can always reference back to the line item detail to see what was happening in the past. I'm just going to hit cancel here. And really, throughout this entire process, as you're populating the data and as multiple users are going to be interacting with this template, what Prophix is doing in the background is maintaining an audit trail for the finance team. What we hear from a lot of our customers is, they'll receive back a template, and whenever they try to figure out what happened, and they don't really know who to reach out to, who populated it. But with Prophix data history, what Prophix is doing for us is really just retaining the changes that are happening. So I made changes to office expenses as an example. If I wanted to see who made the changes, I can easily see that right here. So I'll see the user who made the change, the time of the change, the value of the change, obviously, and even how the change was made as well. So all of that information is available to me right here. But if the budget owners want to be a little bit more proactive and they want to provide some guidance on what they're doing, they can also do that right here in Prophix by adding comments. Now, cell comments are very similar to what you're used to in Excel, right? You can punch in a text comment here, but beyond that, in Prophix, what you can also do is include attachments. Now, when you include attachments, you can include PDFs, emails, Excel sheets, any kind of support that they might, the users feel like would be relevant for the finance team. That can be done right here so that it travels with the template, it travels with the cell, instead of the finance team reaching back out to the users to get the information that they might need. Now, the great thing about everything that I've shown you so far is the fact that all this data is retained centrally in Prophix. And what that means is any kind of changes that I'm making here are going to cascade throughout the system, including the comments that I showed you, the attachments with the comments as well. They're going to cascade throughout the system. So any other user, if they're looking at the same data point anywhere else within Prophix, it doesn't have to be this template. Anywhere else within Prophix, they're going to see the exact same value, and they're going to see those comments that were included and any attachments with the comments as well. And what that does for your organization and for our customers is when they're looking at information in Prophix, they know that they're looking at information which is the same across the organization. So there's really no concern around version control when it comes to spreadsheets. There's no concerns about maintaining formulas, any kind of data integrity, right? Prophix is acting as a single source of truth for the entire organization here. Now, moving on, you can also introduce different items within your budgeting template. I've already talked to you about really allowing to budget by different departments, right? So you can easily flip between different departments here and just budget accordingly. Again, maintaining that template that one time, no longer do you need to maintain Excel tabs. Now, heading back to product marketing, one last item to mention is the fact that this information is stored centrally also means that your finance team no longer needs to worry about standardizing any of the templates that are received back, right? Remember, I mentioned earlier that when you send out these custom templates, they don't need to take that custom format and put it into a standard template anymore. Since Prophix is taking care of all of that effort for them, the finance team simply needs to worry about any of the other value add activities that they can contribute to the entire budget cycle. And that's really it for the Opex side, the Opex budgeting side. Let me quickly show you another step in my process here, and let's chat about personnel planning and what that looks like in Prophix. So when it comes to personnel planning, what I've really heard from our customers is that they face a trade-off between efficiency and accuracy, right? So you can do your personnel budget really quickly, You can take some high-level assumptions and just run off of that, or you can be a little bit more accurate where you take into account the person's state of residence as an example and the appropriate payroll taxes, the type of benefit plans they have enrolled in, or if they've chosen not to, any kind of retirement benefits to take into account. With Prophix, that trade-off question no longer is relevant because really all that needs to happen for within Prophix for personnel planning is you define certain fields and Prophix takes care of the rest. Let me show you an example of a brand new employee that you might want to budget for in the new year. Right, so you'll just define a couple of fields that are required here. Right, so we'll set up Joe over here, and he's going to be working in product marketing. He's going to be a manager. Let's say they're going to start in May. Give them a base salary and just define where they live. So they live in, let's say, Texas. So once all of this is defined, really Prophix is taking care of all the calculation effort for me. It's taking into account the fact that they're starting in May, taking into account the fact that they're based in Texas, so the appropriate payroll taxes associated with Texas, and the fact that their retirement and health plan does not kick in until 3 months after their start time, and based on their selections, what the appropriate benefits and retirement matching numbers are. Once all of this is done, your work is done, and you can really just let Prophix take care of the rest in terms of the calculations and how it's going to get allocated to the appropriate department and so on. I'm just going to hit update here. And my personnel budget is done as well. Now, in terms of the personnel budget, all these other people that you see here, I uploaded them using a direct feed from my payroll system. And really, most of these other fields are automatically defined in the payroll system. Once that's brought in, Prophix is really taking care of the rest. And if I head back to my Opex budget here, let me update this screen, and you can see this section at the top is populated as well, just showing you that the concept of centralized values in action, right? I did my payroll budget over here, but since everything is connected, everything is populated automatically with all the changes that were defined. Okay, so that's kind of what our basic annual budgeting and planning looks like. I have some other templates here as well, the revenue planning, I have CapEx planning and so on, but I'm not going to get into that today. Let's switch gears and talk a little bit about your reforecasts. So a lot of our customers come to us and really complain about, just the amount of time that's required just to get the reforecasting process started. So I showed you a little bit of the budgeting. They essentially need to go through all of that process all over again before they can even start reforecasting. But what Prophix does is it really simplifies that entire process so that the tedious effort just to get started is taken care of, so they can actually reforecast however frequently they'd like to do it. Now, here's an example of an Opex reforecast that I've put together. This is a 3+9 reforecast where the first 3 months are actuals. This feed is going to be coming directly from Sage. And this is uneditable because, again, these are actual months. Now, the rest of the months are entirely editable. And the way you edit them is exactly the same as what I've shown you before. Remember, you can choose to do it at a cell level, at an annual level, or even as a formula as needed, or a line item detail in terms of an account that's been set up like that. Prophix will take into account that you're only planning for 9 months this time instead of the 12. So if you choose to do an even spread, it is going to divide by 9 instead of divide by 12 as before. Now, this is just an example of a 3+9 forecast. But again, Prophix really allows you to do as many frequent forecasts as you need. And let me show you an example of a rolling forecast that I've put together. And this is, what you're seeing here is a forecast which is 1 plus 12. But within this same template, I've included different forecasts right here. So I got a 2 plus 12 right here, and it just moves on and shows me 2 months of actuals instead of the month, and the next 12 months for my plan. And so on. I got a 3 plus 12 all the way down to an 11 plus 12 as well. However frequently you want to do your planning and forecasting to really account for the changes in our environment, you can account for that in Prophix. And really, Prophix is coming in and taking care of that tedious effort for you. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit here and talk about scenario analysis and scenario planning. So I'm going to switch back to my 3 plus 9 forecast that I was showing you earlier. So what I've done in this template is I've included 2 separate versions of the 3 plus 9 forecast. So I got a version 2 here, and I got a version 3 here. Right? These are not populated right now, and this is what I'm going to use for my scenario analysis. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by copying the 3 plus 9 forecast into the version 2 into version 3. And the way I'm going to do that is it's going to be a very straightforward, simple process that's saved right here. So what I'm doing for version 2 is I'm bumping it up by 3%, and for version 3, I'm just going to bump it down by 5%. Now, this process is going to run in the background. It's really easy to set up, and it's really easy to maintain as well. And these percentages are easy is as you define them to be. I picked 3 and 5 just as an example here. And once that process is done, and it's already done, I can see that it's been populated here for me based on the numbers that were defined earlier. Right, so I bumped it up by 3%, and then I bumped it down by 5% for my 2 versions. This is where you can start doing some fine tuning. You can choose to do it at a cell level if you want to, or you can even do it at a higher level as needed. So if you wanted to, for example, bump the equipment maintenance and repairs up by a certain amount, you can easily do that using some of the guidance here. So let's say I'm going to bump it up by 10%, and Prophix takes care of that for me. You can make as many changes as you want throughout this, really doing that scenario analysis and forecast at a very micro level. Now, if your organization chooses to do a lot of this scenario analysis at a more macro level, that can also be done in Prophix. And let me show you an example of that here as well. And let's check this out. Okay. So here is another example, but this is going to be a little bit more at a macro level. This is a revenue scenario analysis that I've put together. Again, I have my initial budget populated, but scenario A and scenario B are not currently populated. Now, you can choose to set up as many scenarios as you like. For now, I'm just going to go with these 2. And what I'm going to start off with is I'm going to copy the budget numbers over into scenario A and scenario B, very similar to what you just saw. Now, a lot of these processes, I kick them off manually, but you can build them within your workflow so that you don't have to worry about kicking them off manually. And here's an example of one that I've done. This is just part of my workflow. I'm just going to tell it to, get started here, and Prophix will take care of the rest for me. And while the process is running, like it's going to take 2-3 seconds to complete, it's just copying over, again, the budget numbers into A and budget numbers into B. What I'm going to do then, actually the process is done, so let's refresh it. There we go. So it's copied over the numbers. And what I'm going to focus on is the top section here where I can build my assumptions for my 2 different scenarios. Now, again, I've only define these 4 items for my assumptions, but you can choose to define as many assumptions as you like to drive your entire model. Let's take an example here. So I'm going to make an assumption on the material cost here. So we've all seen the headlines. Inflation is arguably out of control these days. So I'm just going to make an assumption of 8% increase on my material cost for these 2 scenarios. I'm also going to make an assumption on my product revenue. Because of rising inflation, I can think of two different things happening here. One would be a decrease in product revenue as some of my customers really pull back on their spending. So let's say a negative 0.5. And, and a better case scenario might be that, business has to keep going, nothing really changes, and I might experience a 3% product revenue increase given the circumstances. And just by defining those two items, again, Prophix is taking care of the rest for me here. All the assumptions being driven all the way down at the different regions I am really planning at. Now, again, all the changes that I am making here are cascading throughout the system. And if you choose to see these items in a different format here, actually, let me show you an example of this. So if you choose to see that same information in a different format, Prophix will easily do that for you right here, where all the changes that were done in a different report do get reflected throughout the system, and they will be exactly the same numbers throughout the system as well. Okay. So really, just in conclusion for today, we talked a lot about what the annual budgeting process looks like and how really Prophix is coming in and streamlining that process, and really taking all of those concepts and applying them for reforecasting, for scenario analysis as well. Really, what Prophix is trying to do is just take away that tedious effort of getting the process started, making that collaboration process really straightforward so that you and your organization can be a lot more agile in your planning and be more proactive in your planning and budgeting throughout the year. Okay, and that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Ijlal. Really appreciate walking us through that demo. So we'll now get into Q&A. So please feel free to type any of your questions in the chat. Looks like we have one from Kristen at John Templeton. Hello, Kristen. Under each department, could you set up various projects? Steve or Ijlal, do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, I can field this one. A short answer to that is yes, Kristen. You can set up various projects under different departments.
Awesome. Yeah, and just to add to that, really everything that Ijlal walked through today is entirely customizable. So all the look and feel of the templates, where we have the different filters or dimensions, whether it's in the pages, rows, or on the left-hand side, that can all be set up and configured. So we have another question. How long do implementations usually take?
I can take that, Tanwir. Good question. This definitely depends on the specific requirements for your company. I'd say on average, implementations take approximately 8 weeks. It could be a little shorter for very simple financial reporting or budgeting process, and it could be a little longer if you have some more complex requirements that require some, very complex development on the back end for budgeting purposes. Overall, RKL and Prophix's value proposition is time to value. So our goal is for the implementation to take weeks, not many months or years.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. We have another question. What are the different user types? So I can go ahead and answer this one. So ultimately, there's 4 different user types. I'll start from the bottom and work my way up. So it is hierarchical, meaning the higher level user type does have access to all the features and functions of the lower type. So the lowest level user type we have is a reporting user. This is typically someone who's like an executive who's just viewing data in the system, just looking at reports or dashboards. One level up from that is what we call a standard user. These are typically budget owners who are going to be writing data into the system, typically during the budgeting process or the forecasting process, as Ijlal showed us during the demo. One level up from that is what we call an advanced user, typically someone in finance. These are users who can create reports, run processes, things like that. And then the highest level user we have is the administrator. This is really the power user. They have full access to the system, including the model management and security modules. So we have another question from Masai. What is the limit on the number of departments?
Sure, I can field that one as well. So there essentially is no limit to the number of departments or members within a dimension that you may choose to have. It really, the limitation is based on you and your organization and how detailed that you would like to get in terms of your planning or your analysis.
Awesome, thanks, Ijlal. We have another question. How often can data be refreshed from Sage or any ERP in Prophix?
I'm going to take that one, Tanwer. Good question again. I'd say this also depends on your specific requirements. Most customers refresh data on a nightly basis, typically in off hours when there's not a lot of activity in the system. However, it can really depend. During month end, you may want to see transactions reflected in Prophix immediately for reporting. So you do have the ability to run that import process on demand as many times as you need to. So it really can be used on an ad hoc basis. And typically that process only takes a few seconds or minutes, doesn't take hours.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. We have another question. How often are there updates or new releases? I can go ahead and answer this one. So Prophix has quarterly releases, and in those releases, it's automatically rolled out to all of the cloud customers. Within those releases, there's usually patch fixes or additional features and functionality. We do allow our customers to submit product requests or product feedback, and oftentimes we'll incorporate that into our releases as well. There's tons of different examples that we've done. For example, on the dashboard, having the ability to see a geo map is one that one of our customers requested, and we actually incorporated that into the product. And then we have one more question. What support is offered?
I can take that one as well. With Prophix being a cloud-based solution, typically there are not true support-related questions that you may run into with an on-premise system. So true tech support is rare with Prophix. The most common support we run into is training related to onboarding new employees or helping existing users brush up on their knowledge. Other common support we often provide is when a client wants to expand their use of the tool. We're often asked to assist or advise or even develop the new models given our expertise with the system and the client. So we typically provide these services on a T&M basis, but we are also able to support or provide support agreements to meet each client's needs. Prophix also offers a customer success package, which is geared more towards those who might want to self-implement, which becomes part of your kind of annual subscription process. And if there ever is a true tech issue that does arise, Prophix provides support in that case, and we're able to, or the client can submit cases to address the issue directly with Prophix.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. We have one more question that came in from Masai. What is the annual or monthly software cost? So I can answer this one. So Prophix is an annual subscription, and really the cost is dependent on the number of users and the different user types that we walked through on the previous question. So depending on how many users we have, that really is what determines the annual cost. If you do have an idea as to what the different license types or user types are, please reach out to us, and we're more than happy to provide you with the quote. So it looks like that's all the questions, unless anyone else had any other questions they wanted to quickly type, and we can answer it here. Okay, awesome. So I will flip this back over to Laura.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And if you think of any more questions that you have from either an RKL eSolutions or a Prophix side, feel free to reach out to your RKL rep, so your CSM, and they'll be able to kind of direct your question to whoever is best able to answer it. We will be sending out this recording within the next few days here, and thank you all very much for attending.
There's one more question here from James.
Good.
So James is asking if we have complex financial models that the system can't support, is there an Excel plugin that can be used to refresh and upload data? Okay, yeah, so I can try to answer this as well. So James, yeah, so Prophix does have an Excel plugin that we have introduced, I believe, last year, which what it does is brings a lot of the functionality that I showed you and a lot of the benefits of doing data entry within Prophix, including centralized values where everything is stored centrally, brings all of that into your Excel spreadsheet as well. Right, where you can talk both ways, pull data from Prophix and send data back into Prophix as well. And what you can utilize that Excel function for is really some of the more complex items that you might need to do for your complex financial models. Now, but with that said, we do connect you with a consulting team, so whether it be RKL and so on, they will try to work with you on some of the financial models that you may have and really find ways of just incorporating that right within Prophix, so that might not even be necessary.
And I can just add to that too, that one of the real powers of Prophix is the ability to use Excel formulas and functionality directly within the interface. So the templates that were demoed to you today can support some pretty complex Excel formulas as well. So that's one of the unique aspects of Prophix. We often are able to build some pretty complex models in the system to account for that. But if it ever was the case, the Excel plugin is always an option as well.
Thank you both. That was a good answer. Thanks, James, for submitting another question. If anybody has anything else, feel free to pop it in now. And like I said, if you think of anything later, feel free to reach out to us directly, and we'll be happy to direct that question for you. It looks like that is it for today. So thank you, everybody, for attending, and we look forward to seeing you on another webinar soon.